Signals intelligence, or SIGINT for short, is one of the most sensitive subjects for governments worldwide. Everyone tries to pretend it doesn't exist, and that's included successive Australian governments. Our electronic spies, now known as DSD, the Defence Signals Directorate, were not publicly acknowledged until the 1970s, and D-Notice number 3 is aimed at maintaining as much secrecy as possible about DSD's day-to-day operations. But the official culture of neither confirm nor deny also means that we never even acknowledge SIGINT operations against ourselves. The entire subject is taboo, even though Australia's been a target for many, many years.
Canberra, around the Soviet embassy, unfolds an incredible story that has made world headlines.
In the 1950s, the Soviet defector Petrov revealed there were 2 secret code rooms on the Soviet embassy's top floor. In the late 80s, the Soviets had a big high-frequency antenna running from the yard to the roof. The 2 poles supporting it were themselves antennas. Their use? Well, the embassy had never sought permission for a transmitter, and they needed only 1 aerial, not 3, to receive calls from Moscow. Canberra-based Professor Des Ball, an internationally respected authority on strategic studies and signals intelligence, had no doubt what the aerials were for.
Their basic intercept purposes would be to monitor diplomatic traffic coming into other embassies in Canberra from their home capitals, as well as, of course, to monitor high-frequency communications from Australia's embassies abroad back to the Department of Foreign Affairs here in Canberra.
As for the mast antenna on the roof, the then Soviet charge d'affaires Valery Zemskov said it wasn't an antenna at all.
It is the ventilation chute coming from the toilet.
Nonsense, said Professor Ball. It was a high-frequency aerial for local signals like fire brigade, police and ASIO.
Yes, they'd be trying to keep a fairly close ear to all of those sorts of communications, particularly if they're considering running any sorts of classic espionage operations where someone from the embassy is going out to drop something or to meet with someone. They'd want to know, they'd want to cover the whole local HF and VHF spectrum to know if any of the counterintelligence agencies are onto them.
But the KGB and Soviet military intelligence also allegedly operated a mobile electronic spy unit using a nondescript van like this one in the Soviet embassy compound, a van with equipment able to eavesdrop on computers and word processors from outside a building. The targets included Parliament House, Foreign Affairs, Defence Headquarters, ASIO and the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. The van was detected outside PM&C in the mid-80s during the installation of a new computer system, and for several months afterwards the system was not allowed to handle confidential material. But Professor Ball's allegations went further, involving Canberra's Black Mountain Tower, a communications link of national importance.
Most of the telephony and data traffic between Sydney and Melbourne pass through this tower. Also, most of the telephony and data traffic between Canberra and Sydney and Canberra and Melbourne pass through here. So it's a very important telecommunications facility.
Telephone calls, telexes and computer data, much of it highly sensitive, is beamed at the tower from a string of microwave dishes from hilltops every 30 kilometres or so between Sydney and Melbourne. As the signals reach the tower, they're more than 4 kilometres wide, and Professor Ball claimed they were being intercepted by a secret microwave dish in the roof of the Soviet embassy.
Yes, the telephone connections to Parliament House, to Defence, to Foreign Affairs, to the units of the various Australian intelligence agencies which are housed in Canberra, they would be right at the very top of their priority.
Professor Ball based his claims on information from the CIA plus his own research worldwide. For example, this Soviet estate near New York, which intercepted communications along the eastern seaboard, and the then new Soviet embassy in Washington, perfectly positioned to pick up telephone calls on microwave from 4 communications towers, the Pentagon, the State Department and the US Capitol.
And these are microwave dishes,
yes,
picking up phone calls?
These are microwave dishes picking up phone calls.
And that's proved?
And that is proved, yes, there's absolutely no doubt about that.
In Canberra, Professor Ball claimed the Soviets had a mini telephone exchange, with some computers targeting important telephone numbers and others triggered to respond to key words. Publicly, there was no response to the professor's telephone numbers, and others triggered to respond to key words. Publicly, there was no response to the professor's allegations. Privately, the Defence Department installed a $200 million scrambler phone system, and the Cabinet Room in the new Parliament House was built as a room within a room, as secure as possible from electronic spying. Nowadays, the former Soviet embassy is under new management, but the aerials are still there. Are they used for spying? Of course not, they say. But that's what they all say. That's the sort of thing our government would say while brandishing D-Notice number 3. Meanwhile, we have a new embassy in Canberra, the Chinese, virtually under the shadow of the Black Mountain Tower. We may never know whether they have been listening into us while we have been trying to listen into them, nor are we ever likely to have official confirmation that our embassy in Beijing was riddled with listening devices installed by the Chinese. What is clear, though, is that SIGINT is widely used by all major governments, including our own, and the end of the Cold War has simply shifted some of the focus to valuable commercial information.
I should think the Australian intelligence community has been working on the assumption that the Soviets have been doing this for decades, certainly going back to the Petrov revelations in the early 1950s. And there are branches or groups within some of the intelligence agencies that are devoted to determining more about these particular operations.
But basically they're allowed to continue.
Well, there's really no way of stopping them. What goes on in their diplomatic establishments is essentially their business.
Unofficially, though, Dr. Ball knows only too well what goes on in diplomatic establishments can easily become everybody's business. Tonight, all you have to do is ask the Chinese.